Picture a car that looks like a milk jug, runs on a Dodge economy car engine, and yet beat Ferraris at the track. That car existed, and racing officials eventually got so fed up with it, they just banned it outright. In 1978, Warren Mosler moved to Chicago and he needed a car. He hadn't grown up dreaming about the big old muscle cars here in America or some of the more boutique European vehicles. For his use case, he just needed something to get around with. So he bought a Volkswagen Rabbit and he started racing it on the weekends, and then fell in love with something that most people overlook, and that is just how fast a light car can be, even with a modest engine under the hood. The response, the tossability, it's something that you can't replicate with a car that's heavy. That realization stuck with him. Mosler was a hedge fund manager and economist by trade, the kind of guy who thinks in systems and numbers. And what he saw in that little Volkswagen Rabbit was a formula that the automotive industry was largely ignoring. So he decided to build a car around it. That car would be called the Mosler Consulier GTP, and it was his obsession with this lightweight sports car that made it almost unbeatable. This obsession led him to one clear-cut answer as the way he would gain an edge over the competition. Composite materials, carbon fiber, and Kevlar panels laid over a fiberglass monocoque with closed-cell foam filling in the gaps. This was his secret. Almost all cars use metal for part of their structural integrity. Metal is quick to work with, strong and flexible, but it's also heavy. Mosler envisioned a car made out of almost entirely lightweight, rigid composite material, something that only someone with money and time to burn would seriously try, as it was so out of the norm for the automotive industry. Now, you've probably seen cars where you have fiberglass body parts stacked onto metal parts, like cheap old fiberglass flares slapped on a metal quarter panel. You'll see waves and ripples in those fiberglass body parts. Those distortions start to show up because of temperature cycles. Hot, sunny days followed by cool nights. When adjoined to the metal, they have different temperature sensitivities. Cars with lots of structural metal minimize the distortion of composite parts because you have smaller pieces of composite to rely on, and those smaller pieces end up distorting less over time. But a car made entirely of composite, at least back in the 80's, couldn't necessarily do that, at least not the way most people were doing it. All the body parts would have to be temperature cycled under pressure in their molds in controlled conditions, which is a process that takes forever compared to stamping metal, which is why the big three and other manufacturers didn't do it. But if you are willing to invest enough money, your car can be made almost entirely of composites. And Mosler spent the time and money to prove that. One of the few metal structural components inside of Mosler's new car, the Consulier GTP, would be the tubular subframes to hold the driveshaft in place and a few steel contact points for the suspension. But the overall body and majority of the chassis was this composite material. The GTP itself went from idea to fully fledged street car between 1985 and 1988. Aside from the unique body, the rest of the car was cobbled together using a variety of off-the-shelf parts, mostly from Chrysler. The first series of the Consulier GTPs used a 2.2L inline four-cylinder engine called the Turbo 2. It was used in Chrysler's K cars as well as the Shelby Omni GLHT, the Charger GLHS, and the Daytona. The engine was mounted in the middle of the car to give it a better balance and, of course, to provide some additional weight on the rear tires to help it squat better for acceleration. A mid-engine car for handling purposes really needs no further explanation than that. That little 2.2L Chrysler motor, though, was kind of a beast. In the Consulier, it was turbocharged, up to 12 pounds per square inches and intercooled. As a result, with some custom ECU tuning, this car was making 174 horsepower at 5,200 revolutions per minute and 200 foot-pounds of torque. Now, these Consulier GTPs were available with a street tune like I just mentioned, or apparently a track version, which was closer to 195 horsepower. Now, these aren't world-beating numbers, but paired with the fact that the GTP only weighed about 2,200 pounds, this is a whole other story. The GTP was fast. 0 to 60 inches about 5 seconds, 5.3 seconds at the worst, a quarter-mile time in, the mid 1.3s, and a top speed of 155 miles per hour. And after 1991, this car got even faster by incorporating the updated Turbo 3 engines, which had heads designed by Lotus. The Turbo 3 versions of these Chrysler motors had dual overhead cams, 4 valves per cylinder, and an all-new ignition system, which helped them squeeze more power out of those 2.2 liters. This motor went into some of the fastest cars Chrysler made in period, including the Dodge Spirit RT, the street version of the engine. In the GTP would now make 190 horsepower, and the tuned-up race version supposedly made over 225 horsepower. The rest of the patchwork for the vehicle was picked to help make that little engine scream on and off track. A Getrag 5-speed manual transmission and limited slip diff helped bring that power reliably to the rear wheels. The suspension was a fully independent setup at all 4 corners designed by McKee Engineering. The company started by Bob McKee, best known for his work on the cars in the Can-Am series in the 60s. The brakes were 10-inch vented discs that could bring the GTP to a stop from 65 miles per hour in under 100 feet. Performance-wise, this car was a weapon. But the body, well, let's talk a little bit about the body. Mosler may be a brilliant investor and economist, but when it comes to design, he's no Pininfarina. The Consulier GTP is an odd-looking car to say the least, even for the 80s, which is like the era of odd-looking cars. Some people claim that they learned to love it, but I don't know if that's necessarily true. Or maybe it's something closer to Stockholm Syndrome for a squared-off wedge that's somewhere between a half-melted milk jug and a doorstop. In my opinion, it's the kind of design that only looks as good as equations. It's aerodynamic, sure, and I'm not doubting the performance of the car because this thing was crazy. But the visuals are largely what probably hampered sales of the car. The front end looks like you stretched out a first-gen 300ZX and forgot where the headlights were supposed to pop up. And the rear grille looks like a tacky PC case with an exposed fan. The main body shape is so square and straight, it makes me think of like a little hot tub with a wedge attached to one end. Alright, but enough of me making fun of the looks of this car. It's not the prettiest, but if you can, get past its looks. The GTP was incredibly fast. In fact, it was so fast that it won a ton of races in the early 1990s. It won the 199,024 hours of Nelson Ledges race and dominated SCCA racing. In 1990, it won another notable victory at Lime Rock in 1991 and at Laguna Seca. But, perhaps, its biggest win was at the IMSA Bridgestone Potenza Supercar World Championship that year. The Series 2 GTPs outraced a Porsche Turbo driven by Hurley Haywood. They beat out a Callaway twin-turbo Corvette driven by Boris Said. They beat out Firehawks, Saleen Mustangs, and Lotus Esprits. Without modifications, they were faster than any other stock car in their class. The International Motorsports Association did not enjoy the results of this car being so dominant. So they started out in 1991 by putting an extra 300 pounds in the car to try and slow it down and make it more even with the rest of the playing field. But they ended up just banning it outright at the end of that year. The car was so fast that Mosler himself offered $25,000 to anyone who could outrun it on a Doblo track with a stock car. Car and Driver tried to claim that prize in 1990, but ended up getting into a fight with Mosler about their methods. They raced a well-used 1,988 GTP against a brand new 1,990C4 Corvette. And the Corvette got about 1 second better time out of the 3 laps they each did. Mosler tried to bargain with Car and Driver, offering to run the test again with a newer GTP, but the deal fell through and led to Car and Driver's negative and sarcastic review of the car. From 1985 to 1993, Mosler built a little over 80 of these cars. As I mentioned earlier, there were both race and street versions, with the race versions getting a little bit more power. The Consulier GTP, surprisingly enough, passed crash testing in 1987, and from 1988 to 93, they were one of the fastest, if not the fastest, stock street car you could buy. And if that wasn't enough, after the Consulier GTP came out, Mosler released a V8 powered version of this car that they called the Intruder, and then after that, the Raptor. And the Raptor was again a V8 powered version of this car with a very unique windshield that was split down the middle. You've heard of a split window rear on a Corvette, but how many times have you seen a split front windshield? Unfortunately though, because of all the engineering costs that went into making these composite bodies and the low production nature of the cars, they were incredibly expensive. The base model Consulier GTP would set you back almost 50 grand. A luxury LX trim package got you Recaro seats, interior leather, air conditioning, and a bunch of other creature comforts, but that was $60,000. That doesn't sound too crazy if you're thinking in today's dollars for a supercar, but back then, you could get a Ferrari 308 for a few $1,000 less than the luxury trim Consulier. Despite their rarity, cool factor, speed, and relatively inexpensive maintenance, Consulier GTPs haven't really managed to increase their value over time. When you can find one for sale, they typically go for what they did new or less, even down to around $30,000.